Good evening and welcome to the Town Board of the Town of Austin work session for Tuesday, June 16th, 2020. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance with our flag image. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our flag remains at half staff as we continue to recognize deaths of our fellow residents in New York State who have passed from coronavirus. So I'm going to just start with some announcements, and then we are going to launch into multiple work session topics for this evening. First, conversations have continued this week in our community and across the country about biases that are ingrained in our institutions, organizations, and policies. We must continue to have these conversations and not let them fall by the wayside as other news stories return to the front page. Addressing calls for justice must remain a priority for all of us. With this in mind, last week we met with representatives from the Coalition for Understanding Racism Through Education, known as CURE, which is a not-for-profit that was established in Larchmont, Mamaroneck. And we were talking to them about how we can facilitate an ongoing dialogue about equity in the community, to continue to advocate for equity through working with our partners, and allow space for listening and learning from our Black and Brown friends and colleagues. Austin's Community Equity Task Force will review the CURE information along with other resources that members have shared, including our own Councilwoman Shaw, who is also on the School District Equity Task Force, before providing a townwide survey for all residents and organizations to consider. The task force currently consists of a group of stakeholders, including members of the school district, members of the Austin chapter of the NAACP, Austin Public Library staff and board members, youth leaders, community members, and municipal leaders. If you are interested in becoming part of our Community Equity Task Force, which is our working title, please email me at dlevenberg@townofosney.com. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 22nd at 10 a.m. via Zoom. This Friday is Juneteenth, a holiday celebrating the day in 1865 when news of the end of the Civil War and emancipation reached slaves in Texas. The state was nearly 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, but the news was delayed in getting to rural Texas as the war raged and slave owners refused to free their slaves. Juneteenth has been celebrated since 1865, especially in Texas, but was often ignored or unknown until the Black Lives Matter movement drew it into national attention. This year, celebrations will be altered, but you can join a virtual celebration being hosted by the New York City Coalition for Educational Justice at noon on Friday. Register at bit.ly/CEJ as in John Block Party. Information about this event is available on our town Facebook page. While we cannot offer permits for celebrations that would involve large group gatherings at this time, we understand there may be a peaceful protest organized at which Juneteenth will be recognized at the waterfront at 7 p.m. this Friday. I believe people are going to start gathering around 6:30. We will do everything we can to make sure people are safe. If you do choose to attend, please remember to wear a mask and maintain 6 feet of distance between yourself and those not living in your household. We have started to see a second wave of the coronavirus outbreak growing across the country. New York currently has the lowest rate of infection out of all 50 states and US territories, whereas we also did have the highest rate at one point. So that's good news for New York. However, it means that it's important that our efforts these past few months do not go in vain. So please continue to wash your hands regularly, wear a mask, and social distance as often as possible. If you attend a rally, protest, or an in-person forum, or if you already have done so, you're eligible for a coronavirus test to make sure you are not exposed. Tests are free whether or not you have insurance. They're available through your healthcare provider or at the Open Door Family Medical Center in downtown Austin. Our actions today will be felt tomorrow. Some states that are now facing rising case numbers have had to slow their reopenings. We don't want that to happen here, so please make sure that you do whatever you can to decrease the possibility of spread. Austin is currently in phase 2 of the New York Forward reopening process as part of the Mid-Hudson region. Some regions further upstate have entered phase 3, and so far our region is on track to follow them starting next Tuesday, June 23rd. It's certainly exciting to see people safely out and about. Guidance for all 4 phases is now available on the New York Forward website. As a reminder, all businesses are required to fill out an affirmation and post the information in a visible location, even those businesses that were considered essential and did not have to close at all. These affirmations and business safety plans that are particular to your business's industry are a key tool in making sure businesses will mitigate all possible risks of spread. So make sure to go onto New York Forward website, look up what your business, what heading your business falls under, and make sure that you follow the guidance documents. Phase 2 brought us the exciting news that we could eat out, literally, at restaurants. The governor has also been lifting restrictions on more specific areas as well. Today, we learned that hospitals and group homes can accept visitors, though the homes themselves can decide how and when to adopt this practice, which is true about most of the guidance. Nursing homes are still closed to the public. Playgrounds have been permitted to be open, but we are not quite ready to go and do that in Austin. So stay tuned until we are ready to do so, and then we will. We know that people have unfortunately been ripping down our caution tape, playing on our playgrounds, even though we've wrapped them multiple times. We ask that you remain respectful of the limitations that we've put in place because they are for your and our own safety. Low-risk youth sports are going to be able to start again in phase 3, so we're working as fast as we can to get everything ready so that we can start offering those to everybody safely. If any businesses are in need of cloth masks for their employees, they should email Scorcia, SCORCIA, at townofosney.com. We had gotten quite a few cloth masks through the county, and we still have those available for distribution. I would recommend that you consider using 2 per employee so that you can switch out a clean and a dirty one and have them in rotation. And you can at least 2 per employee, or you could even do 4, but do put your request in through the town so that we can make sure that we set up a time for you to pick those up if you are interested. You may have heard that Governor Cuomo has issued executive orders allowing municipal governments to expand the amount of in-person staff. As of June 23rd, which is 2 weeks after the Mid-Hudson region entered phase 2, we can begin to increase our in-person office staff. We are likely going to be handling this department by department, but are certain that residents will not experience much change in how they interact with our departments because we are not planning to open to the public yet. We still do not anticipate that until anytime in the near future, but we are working closely with our partners in the village government to make sure that we have everything ready for when we do open to the public. And all of our departments will continue to be accessible via phone, email, and limited in-person contact by appointment only. Our town justice court staff has also been authorized to resume in-person office functions, and we anticipate being able to open the court window to the public sometime in July or August. All of our town staff has been working so hard to ensure that while we navigate our new normal, residents continue to receive the service they expect from their local government. If you have any questions or have any difficulty accessing a town department, please do hesitate to contact our office, my office, at 914-762-6001. Just a little south of Austin this week brought an important milestone with the governor also opening the walking and biking path on the Mario Cuomo Bridge, which has a scenic view overlooking the Hudson River. Bicycle riders and walkers are required to social distance and wear a mask, and I suggest a helmet too for cyclists. Historic Hudson River towns and all its member communities, which includes the villages of Briarcliff, Ossining, and the town of Ossining, worked with the company Travel Story to develop a driving tour of communities along the Hudson north of the bridge. The app is available for free via the Travel Stories, that's travel, STORYS, app on the App Store or Google Play, or you can go to www.hudsonriver.com to access the app. We're excited to be part of this program, and hopefully with more families planning road trips this summer, we can highlight all the best Ossining has to offer virtually. Also, we, as mentioned before, had our dock at Cedar Lane Park was installed, and I just saw that some of the finishing touches have been put on it for the safety protocols that our building inspector was requiring. So I anticipate that that will be open this weekend. And we do hope that people take advantage of it in the safest possible way, which means social distancing and wearing masks. Early voting has begun. While in-person voting is allowed for the June 23rd primary, I encourage everyone to take advantage of early voting options available until Sunday, June 21st. Masks and hand sanitizers are available for every voter at the Ossining Community Center at 95 Broadway. For those of you voting by absentee ballot, your ballot must be postmarked by June 23rd. If you requested an absentee ballot, but it has not arrived in your mailbox yet, it may be on its way still. I know that I just received mine a day or two ago. If you change your mind or get anxious and you want to vote in person and have already applied for an absentee ballot, either you have it in your hand and haven't voted yet, or you are waiting for it to arrive, you are permitted to vote in person. Just let them know when you get to the community center that you had requested an absentee ballot, and they will negate your absentee ballot. So we learned that from the clerk, and that is good information. For voting on June 23rd, registered voters who have not yet voted via absentee ballot will receive a notice in the mail about where you are directed to vote. If you're in the town of Ossining, there are only 2 polling places, and that's the Ossining Community Center or Roosevelt Elementary School. Again, that's just for the day, June 23rd, not for early voting. Early voting, 1 location. Election day, June 23rd, for the primary, 2 locations. So you have to look at that postcard that you get in the mail or got in the mail already to see where you are assigned if you're planning to vote on the 23rd. And you are required to go to your assigned polling place. Finally, I want to once again remind you to fill out the 2020 census. Our current response rate is slowly ticking up. It's at 63.7%, which is good, but still short by about 6.2% from where we were at in 2010. I would like to take a moment to dispel some myths about the census. Myth number 1, the census does not count young children or undocumented residents. This is completely untrue. The census counts everyone who lives in the United States, no matter how small, newborn babies included. That's regardless of, okay, there's myth number 2. Oh, I think I said undocumented residents, regardless of age, race, or immigration status. Information filled out is confidential. Myth number 2, the census is not available in my language. This is also untrue. The census is available in nearly 60 languages online and by phone. Myth number 3, the census doesn't matter. I would like to remind everyone that we lose at least $2,500 for every uncounted resident every year. Data captured by the census is used to designate the number of representatives in the legislative arm of the federal government. Financially, the money allocated by the census funds schools, the building of highways, and countless social service programs. So please keep the census counters from coming to your door and fill out your census either online or by phone. I know you guys are all very tired of hearing me say that, but we want to get as close to 100% as possible, and we're only at 63.7. Do any of my board colleagues have any other announcements? Okay. No, I see no, my head's shaking no. Okay, so with that, we are going to launch into our lengthy work session. Tonight we have quite an agenda. First up, we have report, our Dell Cemetery report, from Pete Connolly, our cemetery superintendent hat, with his cemetery superintendent hat on. So, Mr. Connolly.
No hats on. Good evening.
Hello.
All right, so at the cemetery, we have, there has been 34 interments to date for this year. We completed our spring cleanups, and the men are doing their regular grass cutting duties. All of our monument foundation orders are currently completed. For the third consecutive year, we look forward to contracting with a company that repairs our damaged monuments. These are especially in the older sections of the cemetery, the lettered sections of the cemetery. They're made out of marble, and over time, when they fall, they break. And the same company has been coming back, and this will be the third consecutive year. Put a real good dent in it, and I think we may even finish sometime this summer, getting them all fixed. So we also look forward to the repairs of the superintendent's cottage. The cottage, which was built in the 1850s, currently holds the cemetery office around the back and 3 restrooms. We're going to be looking to replace the front porch, which is in almost total disrepair, rebuilding of the chimney, replacing of the roof shingles, new windows, and some painting. So we do have a little water infiltration in my back office over some lintels that are missing. So it's really time to do something over there. And I'd like to ask Andy to come in, and he's going to discuss some of the additional items for the budget.
Good evening, everybody. So I know Victoria Caffarelli sent a really good explanation of the breakdown of this project. Okay, good. Got it there. Originally, when this was bid, it was bid as a base bid with add alternates, which means the town has the right to accept an alternate or turn it down. We knew that no matter what, the building needed to be upgraded, but we didn't want to price ourselves out where you couldn't get any work done. Like if we just included everything, it would have boxed us in a corner. So after meeting with the architect, we looked at every aspect of it. As far as like, we'll start with the base scope of $199,468. The next was the alternate 4, which was the main roof for asphalt shingles. Originally there was a choice of putting copper roof or standing metal seam. We chose the cheapest, most cost effective, but will still give 40 to 50 years of useful life, and that was the asphalt shingles. And that's $54,200. In the base scope, it didn't talk about changing all of the windows. It was just a certain amount of windows. And after reviewing everything and just completing like 2 sides of the building, we thought it would be best if we kind of did everything. You know, not these windows were they're average windows. They're efficient, but they're not state-of-the-art windows, and we asked for a credit on those windows to go with a more cost-effective window, which there were savings of $42.93, but we added additional windows because we want to do the envelope on this building. We want to enclose it. We want to be done with it, and we said let's look at the cost of completing this building so it just didn't look like it was half done. So adding all the alternates up. So the next alternate was to paint all stucco, $12,892, alternate 6. If we were to change the windows out 2 or 3 years from now on the other 3 sides, the stucco would have to be redone and then the paint would have to be redone. It really makes no sense unless the board's totally against it. To me, it's let's do it right, and if you can come up with the funds, let's do it that way. Chimney upgrade. It was an add alternate, and I don't remember the price off the top of my head, but it was to bring the chimney back to the original the original look. And after the town supervisor and Victoria and Pete and myself, along with the architect, negotiated with the successful bidder, he said he would do it for the same price as he would not charge extra to bring it to that original look. Basically was honest about it. He said the work is putting the scaffolding up, mobilizing, and to make it look the way it should look, it really wasn't much of a cost, but he ate that cost. The next was so by lowering the windows to, we had a savings of $42.93. But then we said, let's do the other three sides and let's just finish this building off. So that added a cost of $62,975. And then the final cost is the architect fees, which that's based on whatever scope of work we do. The more work we do, the more it costs for their field work, along with their design work and then change order work. We're hoping there's no change orders. I think it's a pretty thorough project, but that's kind of where we stand now. Victoria, you can probably talk about what was originally borrowed and then what you think we need.
Yeah, so as indicated here, and Andy, I just want to note the savings that we're looking at for the chimney upgrade is about a little over $4,000 as well, additional savings. So we had borrowed for the project in 2017 after spending some money for the architect to kind of get these drawings off the ground and the initial evaluation of the project. We have about $270,000 remaining in that borrow from 2017. So on reviewing what we're looking at here in terms of the scope, there is an overage of about $98,000, which we plan on paying for out of the cemetery fund balance. So Dale, I'm not sure if you have anything to add there, or that's basically the summary of what we're looking at right now. And so we had also included in the memo a resolution to amend the budget for the capital project so that we could then move forward with going to contract with the contractor and accepting the bid from earlier this year.
Dale, there.
So in terms of the fund balance for Dale Cemetery, we ended the year with $271,493.40. So taking out the $98,119.13 from fund balance is going to leave us with $173,374.27. And this is a project, in my opinion, that once you start it, you really should just do the job complete as much as you can, especially, if you have the funds to do it. I was looking at Pete's revenues earlier today, and for cemetery plots, he's already reached 78.9% of budget, and for interments, he's reached 53.4%. So they look on target, at least in terms of revenues. If not, they might actually exceed them, which will help offset some of this cost as well.
I wanted to add two things. There was an additional add alternate to do the front door, to do the side windows of the front door, to restore that. There's some work that we cut out that Pete feels that we can do in-house. And not saying he can rebuild these doors, but these are things that that it takes someone who really is in the industry. Tom Clemens, who I've known about for years, but really never did work with him, but understood he has a good reputation. This is not like normal construction. This is lath and plaster. This is rehabilitation. This is specialized work. And the planets kind of lined up getting a guy like this. It was hard to get people to bid it. We had two bidders, and then the other guy who did a lot of work in New England, I think kind of followed the money and went to a job where there was big mansions he could work at. And it seems like the time is right to pull the trigger and use a company like this and do it right once and for all. And also on the management side of Town Hall, sorry, I must have said Village Hall, on Town Hall with the coordination from Victoria and Dana and Sue Donnelly with bidding, it's like that work is done, it's designed, and to me it makes sense to do.
The other thing is, I think that in our last meeting that Tom said that prices for windows had already gone up, but he was going to honor his price from the bid, even though it was delayed a little bit and when we were actually going to get to it. So we're already seeing, because of, supply chain issues, I think we're seeing some pricing change. He was a little bit backed up. I think originally we were hoping it was going to get started in July, but he got backed up because of, having to stop because of pandemic. So I think that, the fact that he's still hoping that he can start in August is good. Tom also happens to be local, and just as a little FYI, he built our 2 little free libraries because his wife is a teacher in the schools, and he did those, I think, as a donation for the ones that we have in Ryder Park and Engle Park. So I'm hoping he's going to do a couple more in the middle of this job. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that I think that this is really the smarter way to go right now while we're doing the work that we bonded for, and while we're committing this money. I think this is one of the it's a very well used part of our assets. There's a lot of traffic, unfortunately more traffic now than it seems that there has been in a long time. Even though we haven't had the bathrooms open downstairs, and a lot of work has been done piecemeal in a very in not the best way to this building over the years, and it looks it. And if anything, we really need to protect the envelope, as we can see not doing at some of the other buildings in the town over the years, has unfortunately seen certain of those buildings go to ruin. And I would hate for that to happen while we have the ability to make sure that this one does not. So are there questions from the board?
So Andy, in your opinion, this is the right way to go? I mean, I hate to spend money in a time like this. I know that we already bonded for this, so the money's already in the budget. But I know the town board is interested in, looking at every dime that we spend and being very frugal. But infrastructure is infrastructure. So do you feel like this is the base of what we can do to preserve the building and not go above and beyond what, there are no extra expenditures, is what I'm asking.
Yes, we didn't. This is not state of the art. This is if it was a private sector business, and I own that building, this is what I would do personally. We try and make these decisions, because we know it's taxpayer money. I think it's, I've had projects through the years that I've scaled back on, and I was sorry that I did. Pete was really serious about wanting to complete everything that we're talking about here. It would have been nice to just put everything in the base bid and have a larger budget number, but we didn't know who we were going to get to bid this job, and we were pleasantly surprised at what the base bid came at. So I think if it was me, I would vote for it, but you guys set the policy. I'm all for it. It's more work on our part, managing it and making sure it's right, but it's at the end of the day, it's going to be a nice project.
Thank you.
And Dale, we can't, this isn't like money that we can just reallocate. The borrowed money has to be specifically for this project.
Yeah. Yes, when we borrowed back in 2017, that's the definition it was given. So we either expend it on this project or we'd actually have to send it back. to pay back the ban. So,
Which we've already paid interest on.
right, yeah.
I also just want to reiterate, Andy talked a little bit about it. You know, there were other alternates included in this bid that had some of the more nice to haves versus have to haves. So like Andy said, there were items that were cut out, you know, due to the historic nature of the building. We kind of said, okay, what would it look like if we brought back some of these nice features, but aren't really necessary features to keep the building standing and functional and a good asset for the town. So I just want to note that as well.
Yeah, I remember there was copper and one of the alternates, wasn't there?
Correct. There was to upgrade the porch roof to copper, upgrade the main roof to the standing seam metal roof, as well as the more custom windows versus the
Right.
standard windows that we selected for this scope.
I think it makes sense to do the work and just get it done, particularly since we have the money and we need to spend the money. Just do it right, do it once. So that's my call.
Anybody else on the board? Greg? Sorry, Councilman Ryan? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for that. And I think we will move on now to Superintendent Connolly, if you could please put your other hat on now. Highway Department, and we're going to hopefully have a departmental report from about our highway department.
Okay. Okay, we returned to full crew on May 1st, with the exception of our clerk, Fern Corsada, who continues to work from her house. We continue to practice safe distancing. We wear masks, ride in separate vehicles. Our locker room is very small, so we don't shape up there anymore. We shape up in the truck room area, and we're limiting our deliveries just to one area. He has to check in with Gary or Chuck in the central garage. We had some strong windstorms in April and May, which kept the department busy. We're out cutting up fallen trees and keeping the roads open. We have been going town-wide, filling in potholes. We haven't finished that yet, and repairing the roads that were damaged from water main breaks over the winter. On a portion of Gordon Avenue, we worked to improve the storm water retention and increase a catch basin size near Ryder Avenue. Stonegate Road, we may have finished this afternoon. I was there at 2:30. They were very close. We are currently working on replacing a stormwater discharge swale that runs through a town easement, which is behind two houses. Our tree service company has begun pruning and or removing dead trees that are on town property. Our yearly generator service on the lift stations was performed in April. On North State Road, our new bike lane pavement symbols and signage is 90% complete. He said he's going to be here either tomorrow or Thursday, so hopefully that project will be wrapped up. Last month we received delivery of approximately 1,000 feet of guide rail, and that'll be, representative called me today, sometime after the 4th of July. We've begun replacing some of the street and traffic signs throughout the town that are in disrepair, or those that don't meet the requirements of the Uniform Traffic Control Devices annuals. We received a request from Westchester County Department of Public Works and Transportation for the installation of 2 new bus stops on North State Road, northbound and southbound, at the Artist Senior Living Facility. Dana, you were there. Paul Frioli and I met with representative of the county, Andy Ziegler, and we looked at the location and any safety concerns and sight distance, and everything just fit right into place, and I have no issues with the installation there of it. And we have received our new 2020 Freightliner dump truck, And that'll be used for road work and snow removal for many, many years to come.
And that was ordered in, I think, a year and a half ago. Is that right?
About a year and a half ago, yes, that's
Right.
right. Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead.
okay. All right. So also what we'd like to bring up tonight is a replacement of 2 of our lift station generators. The town has 11 operating lift stations, and we are looking to replace 2 of the emergency standby generators, one at Parker Vale on Albany Post Road, and the other on North State Road, which is in front of the ASPCA. Now, the Parker Jail generator is close to 40 years old, and getting repair parts has started to be a problem. And the North State Road generator is approximately 26 years old and is experiencing some engine issues. So those are the ones that we'd like to do at this time. And I'd like to turn it over to Andy, Water and Sewer Superintendent, with some additional information on that.
Okay, so Pete and I, about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, went through all 11 stations, and we looked at the weakest links as far as generators that needed to be replaced. And these were the 2 that really jumped out at us. Parker Vale, in a situation where you don't have much time, you don't have a really large capacity. If you lose power there, and you could get into a situation where there would be a spillage, and that would be a big issue with regulators. It's a bigger generator. We did put 10% contingency in the generator and the install. Now these are just these are preliminary prices. They haven't gone out to bid yet. But there's a whole process here. Let me finish with North State Road, and I'll go over that. And North State Road, Pete has been sending the oil samples out for analysis, which is a really good idea. What they do is they look to see if there's any filings in the oil, if there's any fuel in the oil. And in fact, they did find fuel in the oil. And what that means is it's a total overhaul of the engine. And that generator, it's not like a high-end generator, and we're not looking at high-end generators, but those particular types of generators, they do have issues. And that's the same situation. If that generator kicks out, and these generators also provide power to the SCADA systems, not really SCADA, supervisory and data acquisition systems. It's more of an alarm system. And if there's no power there, it might be off for a couple of hours until finally someone sees sewage, on the ground, God forbid, and we're in a desperate situation. You'd have to get a generator to the site. We'd have to rent a generator, like what happened on the S-turn a year and a half ago, which was like close to $20,000, and then we negotiated that price down to $10,000 for the rental. And then you also have to pay, at times, prevailing wages and double time and triple time wages for a septic company to come out and to constantly drain that pit until this install switches over. We're just trying to be proactive on this. I know Dale recommended to borrow $144,100 for this project. So what the other thing that needs to happen is if the board decides to move forward with these 2 projects, I have to take what was originally sized by the electrical engineer here. I need to write a letter, reach out for the health department, make sure that they're okay with these generators being installed in kind. And then they need to be notified that there's a backup pumping plan, that if these generators are switched out and it is bid out, that these generators meet the sizing required by the health department, which they should have been reviewed by the health department 20 or 30 years ago. And then that we have contingency plans that if there's a problem with the job, that there's a septic truck there on site in case we can't get power to our pumps and we get into a high elevation in those tanks. So there's a lot to it, but it all starts with you guys if you want to move forward or not move forward.
So,
And then
Andy,
there's two. and then there's two other projects that Pete wanted to bring up. And we could talk about that after that. It's a lot less money, but that could come out of the sewer fund. So let's talk about this, and then any questions with this first.
Well, I guess my one question is that 144 is the exact amount of these estimates, and does that include the design? And also, does it include any contingency? Oh, it does include contingency.
It
Great,
includes
I see that.
contingency.
Right.
The design was $10,000 for both generators and for 2 site visits for them to come out to make sure it's done correctly.
Okay.
It was so cheap on the design. We do so much work with Lindstar that they gave us a great price.
But I guess.
And you already paid for that somewhere out of some line.
Okay. So, I mean, just because, I don't remember when we got the estimates for this, if it was before or during our pandemic, but, are we sure that these numbers are still good?
Couple of weeks ago, we got these. These are revised.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
And these numbers should be on the high side. I don't want to jinx us, but they should be on the high side. So we could be pleasantly surprised. So I'm knocking on wood right here.
Okay.
So hopefully it's hopefully we get a lot of interest. It's usually electrical companies that buy these generators out. They have relationships with the suppliers. They understand how to, and these also include the transfer switches, which are very intricate. These transfer switches are these big devices, almost like circuit breakers in your house, but huge, that sense when the Con Ed power kicks off, that within a certain time it starts the generator, it makes sure it's up to a certain percentage of speed, switches over without messing up the hertz and the cycles, and then also determines when the power comes back and then automatically switches back to normal power. So it's not just the generators, it's also the transfer switches.
And just as a reminder, these 2 generators that we currently have at Parker Vale and North State Road are at the end of their useful life. Is that, would you say?
That's correct.
Beyond their useful life? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Are there questions from board members?
Yeah, I just had one question. What is the lifespan of these generators?
Usually, usually it's like 30 years. These are not small generators. These are good sized generators. I think that, definitely you got your money out of the 40-year-old generator.
Right.
The North State Road, that was a Generac. It wasn't state of the art. It wasn't a big Cummings. It wasn't a CAT generator. They've had problems through the years, and the controllers and the wear and tear, it's a liability. So should you have gotten 30 years? Probably. Do I think it's a lack of maintenance? No. I just think the design of that generator that was put in, that 50 kW generator, wasn't as nearly designed as the Parker Vale generator. Generators I've worked on, example, we spent $1 million on a generator 3 years ago at the filtration plant. It can power an aircraft carrier. That generator replaced a 35-year-old generator that was there that was undersized and could not run the plant. We worked on that generator, the old generator that was removed ourselves. We had to rebuild the engine 3 times. So it was, and that everybody's water system depended on that. So I'm pretty big on generators. I oversaw the generator project at Pleasantville Road, the generator project, which was $500,000 at the community center. We put one at the operations center for $150,000. So we've kind of gone through the village side and replaced this, and on the town side, you do have a lot of good, excellent generators out there, but these were the 2 that really stood out.
Other questions?
So these are only used for when the power goes out. So
Correct.
They still require, the power will presumably still be running the pump station as you're switching it out. Why do they require the truck to be there and all the pump? Do you have to shut the power off to the pump station?
You do, because on that transfer switch, it feeds the Con Ed power in and the generator power. So when that transfer switch gets changed, there's no power to those pumps.
Okay, so at that point, we'll have the pump working.
You're gonna need the pumper trucks transferring the sewage, into into the other side. Now, the health department just wants to guarantee that.
All right, so we're getting the new generators. If these are still kind of working, are we going to have them on standby for emergencies, or what do we do with those?
I mean, honestly, the Parker Bale generator, that possibly could be auctioned off. The North State Road generator, I would junk it. It depends on how we set up the bid when we go out to bid, but when you're dealing with these generators, I don't know how much interest you're going to have in, a generator. Like, not only is a generator based on the kW size, right, which is volts times amps equals watts, right? So they're all on different. Each generator is on a certain voltage. There's some that are on 230, some that are on 460, some that are on 220, and then there's phases, single phase or three phase. So it's not like we can just take it and put it in any installation. We need to look to see if Parker Bale will fit someplace else. And the other factor is, you take a 125 kW generator and you throw it on a 50 kW site, what happens is wet stacking. Because you don't run that generator under load enough, it doesn't heat up enough when it's diesel, and the fuel goes past the rings into the oil and destroys the generator. So there's a lot of functions, but obviously Pete will look at those, if it can be used elsewhere.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Councilman Meyer, any other questions?
No questions. I think if the useful life has expired, then I'm fine replacing it.
These are behind the scenes operations that we are obviously have to take care of, but is not something that people want to think a lot about or talk a lot about, but they're extremely important for the functioning of our sewer lift stations and our sewer operations in general. I don't think we should take any of these. These are things that have sort of been, unfortunately, kicked, I would say, to the side for some time. And again, we saw the impact of this on our operating budget when we had to get emergency services in last time one of our generators stopped working, and it was very, very costly. So again, I think that we should, very seriously consider this unless there are any objections. And the reason that we're bonding for it is because their useful life is 30 years. So
okay. It's important to take care of our infrastructure. I mean, it saves you money in the end. So I'm for it.
Okay. All right. Any other statements from Andy or Superintendent Conley, or we're good?
Pete, did you want to talk about the two other projects?
I thought you wanted to wait. You wanted.
No, I think we could talk about it.
Okay.
So with the Beldati development, it was negotiated that they were to give us the existing generator that was out the old sewer lift station, which was changed out a few years prior to the town taking over, in which Mr. Beldati did agree to give this generator to the town. And Pete got a price from his emergency generator contractor to put that generator where, Pete?
That's going to go in also in Deerfield, but in Fawn Court. We have it here at the Highway Garage, and a swap out with the newer Generac generator from the Beldati job.
It was at a price of $4,675.
42. Yeah, that one. Hold on.
Thought we just said we don't like Generac.
I know, but these, you know what? These ones,
The
right?
newer generator,
They're like what you would use in a nice house, and
Okay.
they're small, so they have like two different divisions.
Yep.
I don't like the commercial division. That's me personally. It's my opinion. I don't want to get sued.
So that National Standby's quote was $4,250 for that swap out. $4,250.
Okay, it was less than
And what's wrong with the generator at Twan Court?
That one is recommended by them. It's starting to see that's useful time. Its time's coming very close.
So what are we doing with that one?
That's probably got to go. It could be
Brookfield.
junked, Brookfield, yeah, junked or something like that.
Okay.
Stuff like installs like this to me make a lot of sense. If you call Fred Cook's company out, which he has to pay prevailing wages on a Sunday because Pete has his station go down, it could be $10,000 just for a Sunday because there has a driver and then there's a person who works the equipment. And then there's, so you just don't, we don't want to get ourselves in that situation. So that's something that we talked to Dale about and that could come out of the sewer fund. And then the other is you might want to explain the technology with the bubbler system, Pete.
Yeah, it's
But
a
also out of the other fund.
okay. We're experiencing a lot of grease buildup in Mystic Point lift station. Okay, so it's been recommended by All Makes, who is our pump contractor, to install this air power mixer. It helps dissolve the grease, minimizes pump inlet clogging, and we're getting a lot of that from the wipes and other materials. And it also reduces odor and corrosion. So we don't have one in any of our other lift stations currently, but All Makes feels that it would be a good idea to put that in and to try it there and try to eliminate all that grease buildup and the clogging of the pumps from the wipes and the odor control. And their quote is $4,945.
And I'll speak a little bit about the technology. So basically it aerates the sewage, brings it into smaller particles instead of allowing it to build up a bed of grease. Because when that bed of grease goes up and down in that pit, Pete will get a situation where the pump clogs. Now you're burning out a $4,000 or $5,000 pump, and you're calling All Makes in. We're doing the same exact technology, but on the water side, we just let a contract for $1.3 million to Foremost Construction. They're putting these mixers in all 3 distribution tanks on the drinking water side, and this same company does this in the sewer. We're doing it for THMs and HAA buildup and to keep the chlorine evenly distributed throughout our distribution system. But this technology is to prevent clogging of the pumps, and being that it's just air and most of the equipment is out of the sewage, other than where it gets injected into the sewage, it seemed like it was very worthwhile. So,
Do we know why this pump, this particular station has more grease than the others, or
That's a good question. I'm curious why.
is there a restaurant nearby that's, doing something? I mean, I'm just wondering.
Well,
Stick point.
I have an opinion. This is just residential, right, Pete?
yeah, well, Mystic Point, so, and a lot of the wipes now, especially since the pandemic.
But I honestly, I think people are home cooking,
Mhm.
and even there's
Why
grease.
there specifically? They
No,
cook more of this
I think it's throughout everywhere, but that specific area, based on the size of the wet well, the size of the pump, it might give it enough time for this to float up to the top and build that bed where Pete's having the issue.
Yeah.
Parker
Alright.
Vale,
I mean,
where
we-
it's a small wet well and the sewage moves in and out of that as fast as possible, you don't see the same situation. Where you see it, where it gets like that, it becomes septic, it becomes, an odor issue, and it becomes a grease issue. So it would be nice if, I think it's going to help him a lot, but it's like kind of state of the art, but not state of the art money.
I mean,
The other thing is you
Parker
could
Vale,
is one thing, Pete, you could put a big mixer in that would mix around, but then what happens is your floats get screwed up, and then now you have a mixer that's getting destroyed and bearings getting destroyed. This is just a pipe that goes down into that pit and everything stays above.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pete.
No, I mean, Parker Bale did clog up last week one time at night. So even, not Parker Bale, I'm sorry, on the S turn. So, yeah, we're getting it in, quite a few stations. So I think it'd be worthwhile. Even I send the mechanics out, at least one mechanic, alternating the maintenance schedule for all makes and, trying to catch some of these problems before they happen. And we still had a clog up. So hopefully with this wet well mixer, we might eliminate some of those issues.
Okay. Anything we could do about the wipes getting clogged up?
No, I wish. I mean, I think it's, we did put it on the website one time, but, they say they're flushable and they're really not. So they just, they wrap around the impellers on the pumps, and next thing you know, the high water alarm's going off and the guys are going out there trying to clear it.
All right.
Questions? Okay. Okay. So thanks for that information, and we will process that. Can you, I think that I think we've done everything for P. So just wondering if there's anything further about the Highway Department, Superintendent Connolly? Do you have anything additional, or is that it? Okay.
I'm finished. Yep.
All right. So next up, we already have heard from half of our town village engineering team, from our water superintendent, Andy Teese. Andy, is Paul on? I don't know if he's on.
I don't think he's on because I don't think he has anything for now other than I know he's working with some projects with you, but he didn't really have anything of substantial tonight. I mean, I could answer anything that might be pertaining to him.
Okay, well, I mean, I guess the big question probably from a lot of people is about McCarthy, which we have put on hold until the end of the year. I think we're planning to go out to bid at the end of 2020. Which kind of it makes a lot of sense, and that's my recommendation for the filter plant too, to go out to bid in January. It took a long time for your McCarthy drive to get approved by the health department, as well as our filtration plant, and I think there's going to be a lot of interest in both projects come the end of this year, beginning of next. Okay. So. Okay, so that was that question. And then do you want to just talk a little bit about the water plant and any update in terms of what's going on there, water quality?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
So can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so we're through the finals. We're on the final home stretch with the health department approval. Everybody knows that we had the situation with MIB in the water, which was a byproduct of algae that happened a few months back, and then after that was COVID. It's like, what's next? But we were able to build that system. The village board approved $250,000 to build the system in-house, which we did, and we used the water distribution crew, and we built this 2-story powder activated carbon system through adsorption that we installed in the filtration plant in the raw water side, and we had levels of MIB, which does not hurt it's not harmful to your health, but everybody knows what the smell was like, and we did have tons of calls. Actually, Dana gave me one of the first calls, and it was to a point where the levels were close to 100 parts per billion. Humans can detect it when it's over 10 parts per billion. Right now in New York City, coming in on the raw water side, right now we're 100% on the Croton system, which that's where the issue was. It wasn't Indian Brook water. And last week it was about 10 parts, and we reduced it down to 5. Now, a few weeks ago, we were as high as 30 coming in, and we still reduced it down to 8. So it's a dosage of how much we can add as a powder, and then we remove it in the sedimentation process. The silver lining about this is that this happened before the plant was built and finished and designed. You know, there's a couple different technologies. One is we want to take this existing system, put it in the front of the new plant when we build it, and then it gets to be a point, it could be expensive, right? So we don't have enough baseline, and New York City doesn't have enough baseline information on testing. They did not start testing for this precursor until they had an issue with it in October, and then we didn't find out about it until like Thanksgiving, and we really had no time to react. But we figured it out fast. We got some of the leading scientists in the country, and we designed a system on Cottage. We bid it. Actually, we didn't bid it. We did professional services, and we were able to get it fast. We found like the last system available in the country that was built and on the shelf. Normally, they rent these systems out for like, it was like $5,000 a month, and we bought the system for like $115,000. So basically, after like 18 months or whatever it was, or close to that, it would pay for itself. And obviously, we're going to use it at the new plant. Silver lining of us having this problem before the plant was built is that one of the processes that we're putting in the new plant is a UV system, just like sunlight or like a tanning bed, with peroxide. Before, we had a UV system that was going to be installed, but it would not be large enough to handle this removal that we need. So it actually needs to be 3 times larger. So it costs more money, but we do not want to put a $40 million filtration plant, or 35, whatever that number is, and then still get these calls. So right now we're designing the new plant. We're finishing up the final touch-ups with this MIB, and you know, we're looking to go out to bid in January. And it's going to take 2.5 years to build this filtration plant. Any questions?
Only that I know that, you know, people have different sensitivities.
Mm-hmm.
And some people like the water better when it's got more MIBs in it. Is that,
I guess, yeah.
Right. So some people, you know, I don't know, smell it or taste it or still complain about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, sort of get a sense from you, you know, what the level of complaints has been. I know that we've had a particular one in the town that, you know, basically said, you know, we shouldn't have to pay for water when it's sold like this. Yep. And also is concerned about the long-term health impacts of whatever the mix is that we're adding to make sure that we get the MIBs where they are tasting better. So, you know, can you just talk a little bit about that and the health impacts, et cetera?
So, you know, I've talked to some of the leading scientists in the country. They have not found any health impacts from MIB. Essentially, what we're adding is like a fine powder. It's powder activated carbon. Basically, the size of like an eraser head on your pencil. If you unrolled that, it would cover a football field. That's how many nooks and crannies is in that size. You know, something this tiny would cover a football field. That's how much surface area. It's amazing. It's hard to imagine. So that's grabbing all of the organics, the MIB, geosmin, which is another algae. And we're on the contrary, we're getting a lot of calls in saying it's never tasted so good. We had one complaint a couple of weeks ago when New York City's number went up. Now we're testing it once a week, Mondays, and I get the results by Wednesday. So there is like a lag time period. And the only reason why I'm only doing it once a week now is because the numbers are pretty stable. But every time I test it, because I test 4 different areas of the plant, it's about close to $1,000. So it's about $1,000 a week to test this. If I test it twice a week, it's $2,000 a week. So if we get into a situation where the numbers dramatically come up, I'm going to test it 2 times a week. I'm not going to wait a week to get results. So, you know, we react, we dose based on what comes in. If the MIB is higher, there's more pounds per hour being dosed. It's working really well. It took a little while to get it right because normally we add chlorine on top of our filters. And what was happening is on the raw water, we dropped the numbers from 50 down to 5. And then once it made it through the filters, it went back up to 50, and we couldn't figure out why. We called the scientists, and they said, shut your chlorine off on top of your filter before filtration. The chlorine was stronger than the MIB, and it caused the MIB to release, and it went back into the water. So we figured out all those nuances that they didn't even know. So we have it dialed in. Very happy with it. We have lots of spare parts in case something goes down. We have the ability, if it does break down, now there's only one system. The new plant will have another system and this system so that you don't have to call an operator in 3 o'clock in the morning to change bags. If the bag goes empty, you change it the next day. The backup plan always is if the numbers come up too high, we can go onto our own water for 20 days, our Indian Brook water, which holds 100 million gallons, and it depends on the time of year. That's why the water got dramatically better when we realized we have an MIB problem. We went 100% on Indian Brook. All the taste and odor issues went away, and it took a couple of days for it to clear out in the distribution system. But then as the reservoir got lower and lower and lower, I had no choice but to turn it back on, and we were just finishing up the install. So we're in a good place now. Our reservoir is 100% full. I like to keep it as full as possible. Sometimes I like to let it spill over because all the pollen that happened the last couple of weeks, I allowed it to be like a pool skimmer and spill over and get rid of all the organics. But we're in good shape. And so we're cancer-causing byproducts, THMs, HAAs, which we never exceeded in our distribution system, but the times when they did get high, we make changes right away. We took the Pleasantville Road tank, which is a 4 million gallon tank, out of service immediately and put on the little tank next to it, the standby tank, so that the water wouldn't sit there for 10 days. Because what happens is you can have too much storage. And what happened with Pleasantville Road tank, it's in a part of the distribution system that doesn't get much usage. The water sat there and had a chance for it to react with the chlorine, any organics that made it through. So we're putting these mixing systems in, these bubbler systems in, like what Pete wants to put at the sewer lift station. And then we're adding the powder activated carbon at the head of the plant to remove the organics before it even goes in the plant. And the new plant will have the powder activated carbon. It'll have a acid system, which will generate acid on site and have enhanced coagulation, which if you lower the pH in the head of the plant, it doesn't allow the organics to come out. So we're building these barriers in our system so that we have belt and suspenders. And then the final thing will be the UV system.
Similar to what they're doing on the subway, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my board colleagues, has anybody received any other complaints, any other questions for Andy that you have, if you weren't glazing over like a fine donut?
The UV system, you said that you add peroxide as well?
Say that again, add what?
You add peroxide in the UV?
Yes.
Is there any risk with that?
No, well, the thing is, from what we're looking at is it's a very small dose. It's like 2 milligrams per liter of peroxide. And what has to happen is once you add that with the UV, you have to destroy it before it goes into your tank. And the only way to destroy it is to add chlorine. So we're adding chlorine anyway, so the chlorine will destroy the peroxide. But the peroxide is a big, it's mechanically, it causes it to drop the MIB out. And during these times, like we had the ultimate test. Newcastle was on the same water. Now Newcastle, I started their plant up in 1992. It's kind of the same design of what our plant's going to be, and they use ozone there. And they were able to bring the ozone from the MIB from 100 down to 8, and they didn't have peroxide. And I think they're going to add peroxide to their system or possibly add UV. But we had to do these studies and send gallons and gallons to like close to 1,000 gallons of water down to Florida and spike the water and send it out to California and to do these tests to make sure that based on our water quality, the UV and the peroxide would work, and it did work. We didn't know if it was going to work, but it does. So yes, it's a good question. The peroxide will be dissipated by the chlorine.
Thank you.
My other fine donuts, I mean, colleagues. Anybody else have anything else
All right,
for Andy?
I'm
Okay, go
good
ahead.
I'm good on the water plant. I wanted to follow up on the conversation on the filtration in the courthouse on the new system.
Okay. So I made some calls on the courthouse. Based on so first of all, I was asked a question in an email: can we add HEPA filters to the courthouse? In some situations, you can, but not the courthouse. The courthouse requires really high horsepower. We changed that unit out 2 or 3 years ago, and we're changing the other 8 units out in the whole entire building. Right? That's happening in the next month. Karen Walsh is working on it right now. But in order to either use HEPA filters, it requires much larger return air ducting and requires more horsepower, and that's not available there. So the suggestion was, so for HEPA, that's what it is. For UV, for that, it's extremely expensive. It's like $30,000 to add to that system, and we don't even have the electrical capacity on that roof to handle UV. Now, there's options that you can possibly have a UV system where you walk through at the door. I don't know enough about that. But I said to Karen Walsh, and I spoke to our engineers, how do we handle it? He said, the way we're handling it in most of the places and hospitals is that we're just increasing the air changes. Now, we just cut a change order a couple of weeks ago to change out all the VAV boxes through the whole entire building. What that is, it's a volume air box. What it does is it determines it's motorized system that opens and closes dampers, and through a PLC, programmable logic controller, allows outside air to come in. So the answer is, instead of maybe having 4 air changes an hour, you have 15 air changes an hour. It's a little less efficient in a situation because you're heating or you're cooling a little bit more outside air, but at least it's safe. If we bid this job 2 years from now, the technology would greatly change, and you could probably have incorporated that, but it's very expensive. On the residential side, I said, like a residential unit, what's the cost? And they say it's like $2,000 for your house for a UV system that would go into your ductwork. I mean, we might be able to do it with some of the small systems throughout the village hall, that kind of thing, but for the commercial side, it's going to be so cost prohibitive, it would be crazy. It's just a lot of money. You're talking in the millions to do it at that building. So that's why it might make sense to do a walkthrough system. So I'm kind of dealing with that. And the second thing is, or third thing, you can't find these. You can't find the commercial units, and you can't find the residential units right now. It's like they're being sold all over the country. It's like finding plexiglass for sneeze guards. It's kind of so, but not saying it can't ever be done right now. I want to see how the technology goes, and I'll immediately increase the air changes. The HEPA filters would have been nice, but we're just going to go from changing it every quarter to changing the filters every month. And I already spoke to John Heitman, our maintenance guy, about that, the foreman. So it'll be some extra filters and more air changes.
And
What's
Annie,
your
are you
thought-
talking about like the desktop air filters that you can get for like $150 or whatever? Would that be helpful also?
I don't know.
If we
Yeah, like
added
that.
some standalone units with HEPA filters and carbon
Yeah.
filters in them,
Yeah,
like we did that in the dental office.
It's not a bad idea. I just was looking on the commercial side,
Mm-hmm.
I know it helps with allergies, the Dyson units and that, those HEPA units, they work kind of great. So it's something to think about. You won't be able to do a large facility. I mean, you're not going to do a courtroom, but you could do office areas and that kind of stuff.
I'm sorry, Councilman Feldman, were you talking about for the courtroom or for the other?
Well, definitely, I mean, the
offices,
clerk's
'cause-
office, and, we have a few of them, and the oral surgery ones have a few of them around the office. We put one in each room of the office with the HEPA, the carbon, it actually has a UV component on the filter to kill off anything that gets into the filter. Some of them do, and we like them, you know. That way when we spray the disinfectants in the air, we miss the disinfectants in the air, and these filters pull it out, as well as filter out any many more particles than your average system would.
Something to think about. I didn't even know that those units were UV. I know that they were HEPA. I didn't know they were UV.
I've seen with both.
Yeah.
Did you send me that information already, or could you just send it to me?
I did, but I can resend
Just
it.
send it again. Okay, that'd be great. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Cheese? And I think the only other question that I had for Paul was about, I know that at one point that he was hoping to go, and maybe, I'm not sure, Pete, if you can answer this question, door to door to just talk to all the residents on McCarthy about their driveways and the impact. And I'm not sure, I know that he was working with Fern on that, and I'm not sure where he left off. Does anybody know?
That was last year when we were thinking of starting up, but we never did it, no.
I think with COVID, they put a kibosh on it.
Right.
But if it gets to be a point, you can mention it to Paul, or I'll mention it to him to get that ready. But I know it was like the last thing we were doing. You know, we had standing orders, even with our distribution guys. When we get water call outs, if we change out water meters, we're not allowing any of our workers into people's houses.
Sure.
But there's nothing saying you can't meet out in the driveway.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, if it's just meet out in the driveway and that can happen now, certainly it would be helpful to get that done now rather than later. So
I will mention it to him.
that'd be great. Okay, I think then, without further ado, we are going to say thank you so much to Mr. Cheese and Superintendent Connolly, and you guys are off the hook for the rest of the evening. Have a lovely night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Good night.
Hey, Valerie. Just want to say hi. Take care.
And yes, and we did ask Valerie to come on a little earlier than we had anticipated. We didn't know that we were going to have so much great information about air filtration, water filtration. Valerie, I'm hoping that you, if you didn't already know about all those things, that you learned a little bit tonight.
I did learn a lot.
And I didn't talk about earthquakes, so I'll leave that out of
This
it.
is also good.
All right. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Bye.
Have a good night, Andy.
Yep.
So thanks so much, Valerie Monastra, who is our town planner from Nelson Pope Voorhees, is joining us to give the board an update on the comprehensive plan project and discuss establishing a capital project to begin accounting for associated expenses. So Valerie, you are on.
All right, so I think I'm gonna, if it's all right with you, I know Victoria was really the one, and Dale spearheading the capital projects piece. So how about I turn it over to them to just sort of walk the board through what they're proposing, and if there's any questions at all on, you know, some of the expenditures, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. I will say just real quickly that the comprehensive plan process is moving forward. We had the comprehensive plan committee interviewed a firm about on June 2nd. So, and I believe there will be a recommendation coming forth to the town board shortly. So we're moving forward with the whole process. Victoria and Dale.
Sure. So I have up on the screen here. This is kind of the breakdown of what we're looking at right now. I know we've discussed on multiple occasions, you know, what we're looking at in terms of the grant, the budget for this project, which is being funded half by a grant from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So at this point in time, you know, we like Dana explained, we're starting to see some expenses relating to this project. So it's really important that we establish a capital project so that we can properly account for, most importantly, our match for this grant, which we are required to document to the state on a quarterly basis. So right now we're looking at, as previously discussed with the board, a budget of $75,000 for the planning consultant, which would be funded $50,000 by grant funds and $25,000 by town match, and that's our cash match. Then we are also involving Pace Land Use Law Center on this project, primarily for community engagement. They are going to be receiving $25,000 of grant funds for their services. They're also contributing some in-kind services to this grant, which is helping us make this be an affordable project for the town. And then we are also accounting for about $18,000 for anticipated 18 months of Valerie services associated with this project. That's kind of an average right now. If we're averaging out about $1,000 a month, that could be a little bit less likely depending on how this project moves forward. So that's what we're looking at right now. Dale, Valerie, and I did also discuss how to properly account for these for the expenditures. So it's going to be the amount that's not going to be funded by the grant, which is the $25,000 of our match for the consultant, and the $18,000 is that's going to be funded by interfund transfers from the general fund balance and town outside fund balance. And we accounted for about 12%, 88% of the breakdown, and that is reflective of what we anticipate the content of the comprehensive plan will address. So as we've mentioned in the past, the comprehensive plan will, in addition to some of the planning policies associated with the town outside, it's also going to touch on parks and overall town general policies implemented by the town supervisor's office. So this is reflective of what we anticipate the comprehensive plan product will look like.
And just as an aside, just so the board's clarification, the $18,000 that we have identified is actually, we already have a contract, you already have a contract with me, and that's just part of the retainer. But what we are going to be able to do is utilize some of my services as part of the match for the overall grant project, which is why we're outlining it here, and that's why it's going rolled up into the overall capital project. This is not in addition to the retainer service agreement we already have in place.
Correct. So this is just going to make it nice and easy every month, every quarter, so we can say to the state, you know, this is what the town is putting forth for the project, and to adequately account for that.
Awesome.
I don't know if you have any additions to what I said.
The only thing that I wanted to just say, because I know that it was something that we reduced our out-of-pocket, which reduced the amount that we would be receiving back from the state, I think, by about $25,000. Is that right? From what we originally applied for.
That's correct.
And we had that in mind when we went out to bid for the RFP for our planning consultant. So that's already built in. The reduction's already built in. But I know that Valerie had mentioned the number that what the overall value of the grant and the program would be for our $25,000 investment, and that is, I believe,
$290,000.
So that's the overall value, which is a great deal. Something that we had applied for competitively, very competitively, and hopefully, and we have a contract for already. So even though the state has been somewhat wishy-washy about when these funds are going to come through, we do believe that because we have a contract in place already for them, that we will get it reimbursed. And they are a reimbursement grant, so you have to expend the money to get the money back.
Right.
So that's,
which is the grant funds are included in this capital project, because for that reason, they're reimbursable.
Exactly. I don't know, Dale, do you want to add anything?
I think,
well, it's good value for your money. That's for sure. That's a good rate of return. So, for TOV fund, we're taking it from fund balance right now. We could have taken it from contingency actually as well, because we have 50,000 in contingency, as well as for the general fund. But for right now, it's just easier to do that as a transfer to create the capital project. So essentially, if it's unused at the end of the year, it'll just wash itself out with the contingency fund. So definitely a good project, and definitely getting our value from it.
questions? I'm hearing some lovely music in the back. I'm not sure whose, but.
So is there a chance that the state's not going to live up to their promises to match to fund the grant, or we're pretty sure, we're pretty confident they will?
I spoke to our project manager. I mean, one of the huge benefits of these particular grants is that we have dedicated project managers associated with our projects. So we have a go-to person. You don't have to navigate through the state bureaucracy to get answers or communicate with somebody or get updates, which I think is really, really beneficial. And so I spoke to the gentleman who's our project manager last week. And again, I think the state is a little uncertain right now, but like he said, I always advise the grantees that once you have a contract with the state, move forward with your project, move forward with subcontracting, move forward with the process. So, he's not particularly concerned that they're going to take away any grant funds that have already been promised to municipalities. And also the funds for our grant were allocated in previous fiscal years for the state. So it's not someplace that they're going to be looking for, to cover some of their expenses. At this point, I think it's just a cash flow issue for the state that they're not really able to provide reimbursements currently, but certainly as some state tax revenues, and they're starting to see their revenues come back up through sales tax and income tax and that sort of thing, that they'll start to be able to release some of the reimbursement requests that have come through in the past couple of months. But I think they'll be looking for future grants, and maybe grants that haven't gone to contract yet where they're going to be making cuts, but he certainly does not anticipate that that's going to happen for our project. So certainly he's told me he'd keep me in the loop if things were to change or anything that we would any issues that might come up, but basically said this is as certain as it's going to get right now.
Thank you.
And I think it's also important to note, as we've discussed in the past, is that we do have deadlines for these grant funds. And so the deadline for this particular project is 2024, which sounds kind of far away, but it's probably going to come sooner than any of us would like to think. And for the other project, the North State Road, is 2023. And that's when we'd get into the situation where we'd have to possibly give back some of the grant funds, which we certainly don't want to do. So I think it's important that we need to keep the momentum going on these projects to make sure we meet those deadlines, and because that's when we'd really get into a tricky situation.
Okay, so are there any other questions about the capital project or the budget or for Dale or Victoria? And if not, then Valerie, do you want to take us a little bit through the process where we're at right now?
Okay, sure. So I think the next part of the process, I believe we have a comprehensive plan committee meeting this Thursday, and I believe that they'll send in a formal recommendation over to the town board for a particular firm to be part of this project, and for the town board to work on a contract with that particular firm. And at that point, we'll move forward through contract negotiations, and then we'll start the comprehensive plan process. So we are also working with Pace University, as you know, on another separate grant, which is going to run parallel tracks with the comprehensive plan process. And so Pace will actually be attending our meeting this Thursday for the comprehensive plan committee to talk a little bit about that project, and at which point we also talked about having Pace come back to this board as well to talk to the board about the North State Road project. Both projects will be coordinated together, and they will dovetail together throughout the process. And that's part of what my role is going to be, is helping to just coordinate all these moving pieces. Pace will also be undertaking the public outreach, and so that part will also begin discussions probably in the summertime as to what that would look like, in terms of, if we can have like a normal public outreach process, or in terms of contingencies of, especially in light of COVID. So there will be a number of things we'll be bringing back to the town board over the next couple months, dealing with the comprehensive plan and then organizing it so that once we get started, it's a seamless process.
All right. And are there any questions about the process?
I just want to note quickly, because we had a couple of big budget resolutions and discussions tonight. So we'll be, if the town board is amenable, Dale and I did work on 3 separate resolutions relating to the things that we discussed this evening, as well as a resolution to set a public hearing for the bond for the sewer pump station generators. So sounds like the board is amenable on most of the projects we discussed tonight. So we'll intend on putting those on the agenda next week unless there's any objections. So just wanted to kind of wrap that up.
Okay. Hearing no objections, that sounds like a plan. So, okay, so I think that we're going to hear a little bit more now from Valerie regarding some of the work that she's been doing researching our zoning code to assist with our North State Road businesses with reopening. Right now, this work is specific to restaurants opening and operating outdoors, which was recently allowed in phase 2. So Valerie, can you give us a little bit of an update on your effort? And also I know Christy has been of great assistance as well.
Yes, so it's really been a collaborative effort with Christy as well as John Hamilton. The calls were coming into the building department prior to the reopening as to what they would be able to do, especially with a number of the restaurants in their private parking spaces. And as you drive down North State Road, you can see the outcome of the efforts that were put in, that outdoor dining was able to take place within the parking lots. So we developed, with the assistance, we developed an executive order that was signed by the supervisor, and that allowed for a temporary permit process for the individual business owners to apply for, to identify where their outdoor dining would take place, and to make sure that it meets all, fire codes, safety codes, as well as ADA accessibility. So, with that, we were able to at least get those businesses open. I think one of the things that we're continuing to do is to keep the open dialogue between the building department as well as with your town council, just so that when these things start coming up, especially in these other phases, we really can't tell completely exactly what are going to be the issues, so that way we can address them as they come in. One of the things that we also are going to do is to see how, as these phases get implemented, whether this outdoor dining is going to be something that's going to be needed for more permanency, or whether it's something that's going to ultimately, everyone's going to be able to go back to the indoor dining and how they have their original site plan set up. If for some reason we feel this is going to be a slightly longer term phase, we can start looking at some potential zoning changes in the long run, to incorporate outdoor dining as an accessory use to some of the restaurants, and then create standards and have a process for them to, for the businesses to actually make it a part of their site plans.
So, and just as a reminder, we have to renew this emergency order. I keep forgetting which is the emergency order every 5 days.
It's
right?
a local emergency order that was enacted, that was executed by the supervisor in light of the fact that there is a local state of emergency in effect. And that under New York Executive Law 24, it gives the supervisor the authority to modify certain laws under certain circumstances. We did get approval from the Department of Health, because I think it was Executive Order 202.45, provided that the local municipalities could not enact their own local emergency orders. This was obviously 202.45. We're looking at mid to late March. So this was early on in the process when the governor was rapidly issuing executive orders, kind of shutting things down. And I think the risk or the concern was that some municipalities were going to try to enact their own local emergency orders that would be in contravention of his directives. So the requirement is that before you could enact a local emergency order, you needed authorization from the Department of Health, which we did get. To answer your question, Supervisor, sorry. They stay in effect for 5 days. It's to effect June 15th on Monday, and it will need to be extended if the supervisor is so inclined on Saturday, June 20th.
Which I think, makes sense to do until the restaurants, have the ability to have more people inside, because the ability to have the extension right now, especially while the weather is good and they don't have to have any side flaps, which we know that they're not allowed to have, which I specifically asked on the county call the other day. You know, I've seen that all of our businesses have some, you know, on North State Road have set up something that looks, although actually I don't remember seeing where the Briars was. And I'm not 100% sure where they have that set up, but the other restaurants do have, you know, all their spaces set up. They look really nice. I think that it should be working out well for them right now. And this doesn't preclude them from having to obey all the noise ordinances. It doesn't extend their cabaret licenses to act outside or anything like that. It's just dining, and they still need to have all of the distances, as mentioned, you know, abided by from that are in all the guidance documents. And I know that that John Hamilton, our building inspector, did go and review with each of the different, you know, food businesses, beverage establishments. Thank you. You know, that they were in compliance with those. So hopefully we will not have to do this for very long, but I think that if it makes it possible for us to allow our businesses to be back in business and serve people safely, and you know, that then we should continue to do it until we don't have to anymore.
I think the benefit of the 5 days, well, first of all, when you generally, you know, before March, when everyone thought of a state of emergency, generally you thought of a weather related or some sort of, you know, different type of event than what we're dealing with right now. This is obviously much more longer term than what generally we would have contemplated it for. So I think that kind of contributes to the short turnaround. It also gives you the benefit of being able to revisit it over a short period of time and say, okay, is there anything we need to add? Is there anything we want to change? Is there anything we want to modify? And, you know, so there is a positive to doing that. And, you know, obviously we keep in close communication with John Hamilton, the building inspector, because he's really the boots on the ground on all of this, communicating with the restaurants and seeing how these are going. So I'll definitely revisit with him and with Valerie. And I'll have something prepared for you by Friday so you don't have to worry about it on Saturday.
Awesome. Any questions or comments from board colleagues?
I think it's really important to do what we can to help our local restaurants and eateries. I think it's a great idea that we support, and I'm glad you're right on top of that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, as far as whether or not outdoor seating is for now or for the future, you know, I think it's going to be here for a while. So I think it's good we're starting to think about it now, and we should collectively put our minds together to figure out how to make that work going forward.
Yes, that's one thing that we noticed in the code that I think we've made note, and we're definitely going to make sure that we work to incorporate outdoor dining as an accessory use to restaurants, or at least have that as the ability in the code at a future date. And like I said, we'll work, you know, based upon what's unfolding and how things are moving forward. We might speed that process up a little bit, you know, but for right now, we just instituted the temporary permit, and I think we're going to, you know, this is a nice way of, as Christy mentioned, work out all the kinks now that we can adjust it, and then we can seamlessly put it into our code.
That sounds good. And again, I really want to just thank Valerie, Christy, as well as John Hamilton for their heads up on this and working so quickly to get something in place so that our businesses basically were ready, up and running. I think the first day that they could be, to make sure that they had that, you know, the outdoor dining option. So I'm happy to see that. And I know that I've already seen on social media that people have been taking advantage of it and are very happy to have the option. These very nice and fine dining establishments in town of Ossining. So, okay. With that, I think we're going to move on to continuing with Valerie, because we've been keeping her very busy lately. We wanted to talk a little bit about the call that we had with NYSERDA to look at their recommendations, their model local law for battery energy storage. It's similar to what we did with our solar code. We were kind of alerted to the fact by NYSERDA and through organizations like the one that Valerie presides over, which is the Westchester Municipal Planning Federation, that these sorts of installations were coming down the pike, and we should start thinking about being prepared for them by being, having a little heads up and getting ahead of the curve and getting something in place so that if a battery energy storage proposal was before the town, that we would have something in place for guidance. Instead of having to react, we could be proactive. So I know that there was somebody did approach our planning department at some point not too long ago. In fact, I think while Valerie was, after Valerie had started, about a possible installation in the town, which kind of got us lit a little fire under us to move a little faster on this than we had been. And I am grateful to Valerie for having done a lot of the research. And I think you have a little bit more information this evening after our phone call with NYSERDA. So
Right.
take us through that.
So again, this is another collaborative work effort with both with Christy as well as John. But I'll give a little summary as to the purpose of the law and a little bit of background of the law, and then we can go talk a little bit about next steps. So basically, the purpose of the law is to regulate these battery energy storage systems, which are basically rechargeable energy storage systems. And as in the title, they include batteries. So the purpose of these laws is to really ensure the safety of this equipment and to not only the property owners themselves, but the surrounding properties, specifically dealing with, your fire codes and fire issues that can be problematic with batteries. So there are a number of different tier systems that this local law, the model local law from NYSERDA put out, and it's similar to the solar energy law that you're used to, which is there's 3 separate tiers. The first tier is really focused on like more of your residential installations. The second tier and residential installations in the model law go up to about 80 kilowatt hours. The second tier goes from about 80 kilowatt hours to 599 kilowatt hour systems. And then the third tier is an equal to or greater than 600 kilowatt hour systems. And so really the purpose of this is it's a little bit different than some of your other, utility installations that we're used to throughout, the town. So this is why one of the purposes of this law is to really focus, especially with like I said, with the fire safety issues and aspects and the energy code issues and aspects associated with the battery energy storage. Now I do have, we did ask NYSERDA to send us some like visual examples of what these systems look like. And so I do have a few examples I can show the board tonight if you want. I can share my screen.
Yeah, that'd be great. Just so we could take a look, because they're really, and we were actually, Councilman Feldman and I were taking a look at the Marinol site, which is a proposed site for a solar installation. And we were talking to one of the gentlemen who works for Ecogy, and I think that they also do battery energy storage installations. And he kind of showed us that it was like the 2 parking spaces worth of
Right.
Of space was a pretty large unit. So that doesn't seem nearly as big as I was imagining. I was imagining like a large container.
Well, I think right, and I think it depends. Let me show you the 3 different tiers, because I think
Okay.
that's really, I think the gentleman the other day was talking about, one of the smaller tiers that you might see in a number of other commercial establishments versus
Okay.
like really large. So for example, this, what I have right now on my screen, if everyone can see, this is like a typical residential home system. So it's actually a small system. These systems are also sometimes you'll see them applied to solar installations as well. For example, Club Fit is before the planning board right now for solar system being put onto its rooftop, and part of the system itself has these battery energy storage systems. So they're smaller installations. Then you have something which is a slightly larger installation, and this is a 375 kilowatt hour installation. So this would be like your tier 2 installation. And this is an example that's located actually in White Plains currently. And then you have much larger systems, and this one is a 5 megawatt system. So this is like a much, much larger system than I think we would anticipate probably seeing in the town of Ossining. But this is where the storage container sizes start coming into play. So you have, it really does vary, as you can see through the 3 different types of sizes. And that's part of what our next step is going to be looking at internally, is figuring out where within the town are these different tiers most appropriate, and if there's any limitations that we want to put on to these particular tiers, as well as, you know, the overall application to some of your smaller systems, as well as systems that are tied to solar energy projects. Because one of the things I don't think the town wants to see is that there's, you know, if somebody goes for a solar energy project, then they end up having to have like a number of other permitting processes. So if there's a way to sort of make sure that we're not creating more permitting processes for something that could be easily seamlessly done in one process, maybe on like the smaller tiers, and then some of the larger tiers have the additional review and approvals. So we are just in the beginning stages of this, and so as we go along, we'll be providing more information to the board.
And one of the other questions I think that we had was about noise. We also happened to ask this knowledgeable person who was with EcoG about noise a little bit. And while we were standing there, we were hearing noise from an air conditioner unit. And that was supposedly much louder than the noise that would be generated by at least the tier 2 or the smaller, that middle size that you showed us, not this one that we're looking at, but the in-between size. I'm not sure, again, what that larger size, where something like that would even be cited, but
exactly. Well, that's a 5 megawatt one, right? So that is a very large system,
right? So I mean, something like 3 times this here, I guess, gets you to 1 megawatt. No, approximately.
Yes.
Right, gets you approximately to 1 megawatt. So, you know, 3 of those installations, which is probably the size of a couple parking spaces, is more likely, I guess, what we might see in the town. Okay, so what's our next step with this, Valerie? And does the town board have any questions about any of the information this evening? Okay, so do you need to see any more pictures, pretty pictures, or otherwise you want to just get back to our,
sure,
get rid of that shared screen? Okay.
Okay.
Hello, people. Okay, so Valerie, what's our next step at this point for the town board?
So I think the next step is, I mean, first of all, if to just get clarification from the town board that we want to continue, you know, pursuing and working on a model ordinance for the battery energy storage systems. And then, as I said, we'll look at looking at the various tiers, how they would sort of dovetail with any sort of solar applications, especially dealing with the tier 1 solar installations, as well as the battery energy storage installations, and then look at some of your larger tiers and where would they be most appropriately placed in the town of Ossining, similar to what the efforts you went through for the solar installations ordinance.
I mean, I think it's a good idea, because I think otherwise we have to, you know, we're like chasing our tail to try to catch up if we do get any proposals. Plus, I think, you know, again, as we do see some nice proposals coming online for solar, it would be good to have this as an option. So if, you know, I don't know, board colleagues, does anybody have any comments or concerns, or are you feeling good that we should be moving forward with this?
I think we should be moving forward, get ahead of before there's any applications so we could really understand, you know, have a process and understand what we're looking for. So,
I agree.
I agree as well.
Okay. So
All right.
that's the answer to that question.
Great,
All
so-
right. Fantastic. Is there anything else, Valerie, that do we, I mean, we weren't planning, I think EcoG is going to come back hopefully we're going to add a little work session on for them for next week if they can make it.
Yes.
And have them just give us a quick update. I'm hoping that we had a chance to do a little site visit. Councilwoman Feldman and Valerie and I were out there on Friday, I think last Friday. We did a videotape and we shared that with our board colleagues because we couldn't all be there at once. And hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that next week and then decide if we are feeling confident that we want to send this to the planning board. I think that's the next step. Is that correct, Christy and Valerie?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. So with that, Valerie, thank you very much for
Okay,
that
thank you.
update. I would like to take a motion to adjourn to executive session for personnel, advice of counsel, and contracts.
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Okay, so thank you very much. Before I adjourn, I would like to wish a very happy birthday to my town board colleague, Elizabeth Feldman. Tomorrow is her birthday, so yay. We wanted to do a big banner, one-sided only in town.
I know, we're good. We're
but
good.
instead, I wish you happy birthday and during our meeting, and we know that everybody wishes that you have a great day tomorrow, that you don't have to do too many cleanings, and that you have... You're off, great. So that you have lots of fun celebrating with your favorite boys, and that includes our furry friend, Zach. Have a great time. Happy
Thank
birthday. Everybody, don't forget to wish Councilwoman Feldman a happy birthday tomorrow. And we will see everybody next Tuesday night for a regular meeting right back here on your favorite Town of Ossining Zoom channel. See you then. Have a great week, everybody.